I'm only doing this to defeat Donald Trump. Nobody seems to want to do that in the Democratic Party right now, other than me, because Joe Biden can't, is my proposition, because the data says he can't. No one in the country right now cares. In fact, most of the people in the country are going to the Trump rally right now because he's listening to them. No one's asking about this stuff. I'm just frustrated. I hope you understand why I'm getting tired of it. You're doing your jobs, but you're not asking the questions that Americans give a shit about.
Fired up, Congressman Dean Phillips, one of the few Democrats hoping to derail President Biden's re-election campaign in the name of defeating Donald Trump. To say he is facing an uphill battle is an understatement.
Indeed. President Biden's name won't even appear on the ballot in on the New Hampshire primary today due to a squabble between state and national Democrats. And yet, new CNN polling shows 63% of New Hampshire Democrats plan to write in Biden's name anyway, compared to just 10% who plan to vote for Phillips. But Phillips did secure an endorsement overnight that could help boost his prospects. The New Hampshire Union Leader editorial board putting their weight behind Phillips' bid, writing, quote, "For anyone who supports Joe Biden for his policies but would prefer a president born during the Vietnam War rather than World War II, they will not be disappointed with Dean Phillips." And Dean Phillips joins us now. Congressman, it's wonderful to have you.
Top of the morning. Good to be with you guys.
So the Union Leader, historically a conservative publication here in the state, did endorse you here at the 11th hour. But the Democrats that you know and who perhaps once loved you back in Washington are not very happy with what you've been doing here, partly because you've been very aggressive in criticizing the president. My question here, you're sitting at 10% in the polls. Do you have any regrets about how this has gone?
My only regret is that my party just doesn't want to wake up from this delusion. And by the way, I think I'm still loved. It's like a family. You know, we have differences of opinion. I have a conviction that Joe Biden's going to lose. And if anybody looks at the data really objectively, I mean, he's going to. And someone had to do it. And I'm saddened that there's this culture of cowardice, silence, and people sitting in line waiting for their turn at a time where we need to meet the moment. So no, I'm not surprised. It hasn't been nearly as horrifying because the fact is the pain I'm feeling by my party isn't close to what people are feeling all around this country.
I mean, with all due respect, Chris Sununu, we played him earlier in the show, basically saying that Trump is going to lose, and that's why they shouldn't nominate Trump. They should nominate Nikki Haley. That's kind of the opposite of what you're saying.
Well, I mean, I think it'd take a really unusual look at these numbers. And look, the governor's not a bad guy. He knows Trump's going to win. He's trying his best to prevent that. I respect that. But the writing's on the wall. If Nikki Haley's in this race a few weeks from now, I would be really surprised. And that's the truth. And the fact is we have a duopoly, a two-party system that is literally working against voters. And voters who don't want to show up and vote in primaries and then get frustrated by the choices we have in November, that's part of the problem. We have a crisis of participation. And I got to tell you guys, I went to a Donald Trump rally a couple nights ago. Never been to one. I had an event across the street. I saw the line of people waiting in the cold for hours. And I thought, what the heck? You know, I'm going to be a leader who actually invites people, doesn't condemn them. Met probably 50 Trump people waiting in line. Every single one of them, thoughtful, hospitable, friendly, all of them so frustrated that they feel nobody's listening to them but Donald Trump. A diverse crowd, people who had never been to a Trump event before. My party is completely delusional right now, and somebody had to wake us up, and if that's my job, so be it.
You would rather, though, have Biden in the White House again than Trump in the White House, yes?
Of course.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
Do you think that this bid, what you've done, has made President Biden stronger? Because that was one of your goals. If it's not going to be you, make him stronger. Have you succeeded in that?
Well, if he would come out and debate and maybe meet voters and actually start showing up, I'm trying to extend an invitation to the president to get in the game. Because if you want to be the president again, the only way to even possibly win is to get out here, listen to voters.
Do you think your effort made him stronger?
I'm giving
or
him...
weaker?
If I did nothing, if nobody entered this race, the Democrats here, Poppy, have turned over hundreds of hours of primetime TV to the GOP. CNN, you guys, doing one-hour town halls with every single GOP candidate. Every bit of coverage, the GOP, because they've got a competitive race. If Democrats had a competitive race right now, which I'm trying to create, we would have energy. If you'd been to my events the last 3 days, you'd see young people carrying signs, rah, rah. We're trying to get something going. The president is doing nothing. And if he's not going to debate, he's not going to answer questions, how many interviews has he done? He's not doing town halls. He's not showing up. So, yes, I'm trying to do him a favor to show up. And if he does, and he does really well in the primaries, and suddenly his numbers rise and he can beat Donald Trump, my goodness, I'd get behind him in a heartbeat. But get in the game.
Here's what Ro Khanna, fellow Democrat, said about you. He doesn't take issue with what you're doing, per se, but how you're doing it. Here's his criticism.
I don't agree that you should challenge the president, but if you're going to do it, run on your vision, run on your ideas, run on what you want to do for the nation. And the attack on President Biden, on someone who has dedicated his whole life to public service.
I'm so glad Ro gave me this chance. I've been talking about my agenda this whole time. Nobody's covering it. I'm going to start with America.
Fair. Jake asked you last night how your
and I
issues
told
are
Jake.
different. Casey's interview.
And I told Jake last night, if you'd listened, I mean, you guys, if you watch
watched
the
the
tape,
whole thing. I
yeah,
watched
American
the whole
Dream
thing.
accounts, $1,000 accounts set up by the federal government to start raising the equality of opportunity, raise the foundation for everybody. We need Medicare for all. We need a national health insurance program. We need to build 7 million houses in this country. We need education for all that doesn't burden people with debt. Costs and chaos are what's on people's mind. Social Security, we can fix. I know how to do it. Not to mention, I'll have a bipartisan cabinet, a youth council. I'm going to completely change leadership in this country. I would love it if people would ask about what's actually my propositions and what's on people's minds. All the press wants to talk about is things like this. And by the way, what Ro just said, we shouldn't challenge the incumbent. That is the nonsense that Democrats fall into time and time again. Thank gosh, in 2008, a young unknown senator had the audacity to challenge the coordinated candidate, and he won, Barack Obama.
Well, right. So I mean, that's the thing. It's you are running against President Biden, and it hasn't caught on. I mean, what are you going to do if you don't hit, 20% in New Hampshire? You're going to keep going? You said you were going to drop out on March 5th last time I talked to you.
Yeah, and then I've been no, actually not at all, because I'm recognizing that there's an immense need to keep this challenge going, and I will continue it. But tonight, I know your poll has me at 7. Another one has me at 32. The fact is, 10 weeks ago, nobody knew me. We were at 0%. And in 10 weeks, with a ragtag startup little operation, spending almost no money with very few people, I think we're going to be in the 20s today. And if we're better than that, that's awesome. But that's not the story. You guys know this. Joe Biden should be at 80%, even with a write-in. Super PAC, got every member of the cabinet coming up, people like Ro Khanna, my colleagues. You know, Bill Clinton achieved 84% here. I'm sorry, 84%. Barack Obama, 81%. Joe Biden is the incumbent. Everybody knows him. If he's a strong candidate, he should get in that range. But he's not going to. He's probably going to be way, way below that. And I want to wake people up, and that's my job.
In that great interview Casey came up here in New Hampshire and did with you a couple of months ago, you said to her, I could win this, I intend to win this, talking about New Hampshire. Or you said I could open the door for others who might be better positioned. Is that still a goal, to open the door for others? And if so, who?
Well, I've been trying this, I hope you guys know, since I called on the president to pass the torch. He didn't. I spent months literally calling other candidates who are much better known than I, because I know in this game you have to be well known. It helps the cause.
That's why I'm
the
wondering
invitation, Poppy, is still Gretchen Whitmer, J.B. Pritzker, Gavin Newsom, Vice President Harris. Where are you? This is at the practice of democracy that I really am trying to impress upon Democrats, that we should not have a coronation. We should have a competition. And I hope you're telling people also the truth that my party is suppressing voters here. You know this, I hope.
You're talking about the DNC letter.
The DNC has sent a letter to the state here, the New Hampshire Democrats, saying that this is meaningless, despite having a massive write-in operation. It actually precipitated a letter from the Secretary of State here to the Democratic National Committee just last week, a cease and desist for the unlawful suppression of voters. There's a lot going on here that nobody's really aware of, and I'm trying to call attention to the truth. I wish other candidates were participating. Sir, that call is still wide open. The water's warm.
You mentioned Vice President Harris. She has come in for considerable criticism from Republicans and has been listed by, privately, some Democrats worry about her being the second half of the ticket. I mean, do you think that Kamala Harris would be qualified to be commander-in-chief?
Well, I think she should enter the race and be assessed. Yeah, but in the absence,
she's qualified. I mean,
it's not my place. It's not my place. Every experience I've had with the vice president has been, I think, quite impressive. But that's the whole point. What the president is doing right now is what Democrats have done for generations. They stick around too long. They don't give space and place and stage and platform to next generation candidates. The vice president cannot even introduce herself on that stage. Gavin Newsom, Pritzker, Gretchen Whitmer, all these next-generation Democrats are being suppressed by people
Well,
who
Harris
simply.
did lose to Biden once already.
But my point is this: that we should be having a competition. Let Americans decide if she is the right person or not, or he or she or me. That's the whole point. I'm trying to change this delusional process that will probably, almost certainly, have us lose again if Biden's at the top of the ticket. Plain and
Next time
simple.
we have you on, I want the detailed plan on how you're going to fix Social Security. But quickly, before we go
I can
to
do it in 10
Casey's
seconds.
good question,
Yeah.
Casey's good question, how long are you in this?
As long as it takes to get a head-to-head matchup with Donald Trump that demonstrates where I'm at vis-a-vis Joe Biden. I'm just introducing
Months.
myself.
How
It'll
much
take
more
months.
money are you
It'll
gonna
take
spend on
months.
this?